Hey YouTube, TechSparrow here with another simple API video, and today we're going to be connecting to the Indeed API using Python and the request library. Okay, so before we get started, I thought we would review this very simple sequence diagram. Kind of walks us through the steps, or all the steps that we'll be reviewing this video. So in this process, there are three main components. There's the user, our Python application, and then the resource server, in this case Indeed. So the very first thing that's going to happen is the user is going to kick off some sort of action with our application, and then we're going to send that user to the identity or the authentication server on Indeed side. There, the user is going to verify their identity, basically log in with their credentials. And then they're going to be given an opportunity to kind of review what our app is asking access to on Indeed. Once they okay all that, we're going to Indeed is going to redirect them to a URL that we will register, or we're going to set up. And instead of just having the redirect URL, they're going to actually append a little URL parameter on there, and it's going to be the authorization code. Now we take that authorization code, and the application is going to make another API call to Indeed, and it's at a specific endpoint where we're going to take that authorization code and trade it for a token. With that OAuth token, once it gets returned to us, you can see step 6 here, we're going to build a request with the token inside, and obviously the endpoint and any sort of parameters that we need. And then we're finally going to be able to make this API call to like a protected resource. So I think in this example, we're just grabbing like the user name and email address or something like that, right? And then the final step will be taking a look at the response and verifying that we got what we expected. Okay, great. So now that we got all that stuff out of the way, we can get started here. First thing you want to do when you're trying to connect to an API like this is find this website, like their developer page that has all the information about the API and the contracts and how to get the connection going. And usually here is where they're going to ask you to register your app. So to do that, Indeed, you need an Indeed logon. Or you need an Indeed account, right? You can just go to the regular Indeed.com, make an account, and then come back here, and you'll see that this area will be filled out with your email address. And once that is done, you can click on this link here to manage your API credentials, and it'll take you to this page. Now you can see that I've been messing around with this a little bit, and I got a couple of applications already registered. Looks like they allow you to have up to 15 applications. Just a word of warning or caution if you're going to be messing around with this. I have not found out how to delete these. There might not be a way, or maybe I'm just overlooking it or whatever, but don't just make 15 and then, because then you won't be able to start from scratch anymore. But anyways, let's get going. So this button here, register new application, click on that, give the application a name. So we're going to go TechSparrow Programs Indeed example. Let's just call it the simple API example. There we go. Okay, a little brain fart there. This section here, we're asking for the credential types. We are going to be using OAuth 2, so go ahead and click that. Save and continue. Let's see, grant types. We are going to be using the authorization code. Yeah, I'm not getting into all the details with the differences here, but that's for another video. We're just trying to get this thing working so you can start playing around with the API. So. Okay, great. Here, redirect URL. So when the verification process happens, Indeed is asking us, okay, where do you want us to send the authorization code if it's successful? So that's what we're going to fill in here. For our example, I mean, it could literally be, oh, well, they're saying here, accept localhost. So it looks like you have to have HTTPS, but it could be any one of these things, because in our example, we're not taking that authorization code programmatically. We're just going to literally click up here in the navigation bar and copy it out. And what I've done is I've set up a static website on GitHub. It's free, you can do it too. I think it works great for these little examples like this. So created that static page, that's what we're going to use, and it looks like you can add other URLs as well. So go ahead and get yourself a static page where you can send that to, and then save and continue. Cool thing about Indeed, they're like continuing to ask you questions here, but on this side of the page, they're showing you what the user is going to end up seeing. So what this part of the, we'll call this here the register, the new application here, is they're asking if we want to have our application reviewed by the Indeed, I don't know, whatever, API review team or whatever. We're not going to be doing that because it's just a simple example. And I guess if you don't have it reviewed, the user is going to see this warning here. So enough about that. Here's the second part. So if you remember back to the diagram, verification has already happened. Now it's showing, hey, this application here is asking for a certain amount of permissions or access to your information through this on Indeed. So that's basically what is happening here. So we're going to give ourselves company name, company homepage. I'm going to use that static page again, and then let's see here. I guess that's not required. Are any of these required? I don't know, but we'll just fill out a few of them. Go ahead and hit allow. I'm sorry. Save and continue. Wow. That's how real that example looks, right? You just want to click it. Okay, and then we can review our application here, but I'm pretty sure we got everything the way we want. So I'm just going to go ahead and complete the registration. And this is basically our dashboard, I guess, for this particular app we have here. Okay, cool. So thank you for being very patient with me, but you have made it. We have arrived. We are going to start coding now. So go ahead and crack open your preferred IDE. I will be using Visual Studio Code here, and I'm already opened a folder here, like a top level folder to get our project started. I like to operate in terminal as much as I can, so go ahead and open up a terminal and clone our example repository. That link, or the link to this repository, will be included in the video as mentioned before. I'm not going to go into all the specifics about Git. I'm assuming that if you're watching this video, you know how to use it. So we'll go ahead and clone the repository and cd into the project. Let's clear up our terminal. And that's what it should look like. Big fan of using virtual environments. I highly recommend that you do too. Take advantage of a lot of things. So to do that, it's a very simple command: Python 3-m venv, and then venv again. That's basically saying run that module, and then this parameter here is where you want to store your virtual environment files. That is already included into the git ignore. So if you want to, take this away and start committing files to your repository, you don't have to worry about committing like 1,000 files or whatever. Okay, great. So we got our virtual environment files, but we have to activate the environment. So to do that, we use the source command, and we go into this venv bin. Then there should be a script called activate. Go ahead and do that. You can see that our terminal prompt is now prepended with venv. It means, right, the virtual environment has been activated. So here are one of the benefits. We can take advantage of this requirements file here, which basically lists out all of our dependencies, and we don't have to worry about installing them one at a time or what combinations you have to install. So for that, we're going to go pip, I believe 3 here, install -R is option, and then requirements. And this shouldn't take very long either. I think we can live without that, and that warning is not a problem. Great. So all of that is basically just setting up our working environment. Now we can get into more of the code. So open up the simple example file here. There are some comments to kind of help you along if you're tired of hearing my voice and you just want to take it on your own. You're more than welcome to. Go ahead and do that. Let's see now. So the first thing is, you'll notice a lot of IDEs are kind of working with syntax highlights and, you know, linting your program and things like that. So here, now that we've activated our virtual environment and installed our dependencies, this module here is showing up as something that's recognized, and we get all these notes. Before, if you were to look at this before, Visual Studio will actually have like squiggly lines here saying like, I don't know what this is, and I don't understand what this object is. So if you've done everything correctly, you'll see, you know, you'll see all these kind of helper tooltips pop up. So anyways, the first thing we have to do is set up our credentials for our application. So we need an ID and we need a secret, right? So if you remember when we registered our app with Indeed, and you go back to that dashboard, they gave us the client ID here, and then there's also a secret. So a little bit more on that in a second, but let's just get our ID in here. Simple cut, copy, and paste. Okay, and then a warning about your client secret. So for this example, right, for the sake of this example and with you experimenting on your own, it is fine to just take that secret and paste it in here, right? But do not commit if you decide to work in your own repository or whatever. Don't, or even if it's not an online or a remote repository, even if it's a local one, don't commit any secrets or passwords into your code base. So there are plenty of different methods and strategies on how to store these secrets in your application, so they are way more difficult to have like malicious people get their hands on. But again, for an example's sake, this is perfectly fine, but do not use this style for your production code. Great. So that's client ID and secret, and the warning about the secret. Don't bother trying to use mine or whatever. I'm going to end up changing it after this video anyways. Okay, next thing is our redirect URL. So this has to match what we passed or what we entered in when we registered our application. So I'm using this GitHub Pages, this static page here for that. And the next 3 variables are already entered in here from the example file, right? They're already entered. If you wanted to figure out where these things came up or came from on your own, you would go to that Indeed developer page. So developer.indeed.com, and then you just start clicking around the and reading the documentation, and you would be able to find these things. So the authorization base URL, this is the endpoint or the URL that we're using to send our user to the identification or identity server for Indeed. Once we get the redirect and we grab that authorization code, we're going to use this endpoint here to exchange the code for the token. And then this one you can actually change. So these two basically have to stay this way, but this one's just, this is the protected endpoint, right? There's all sorts of different endpoints that we can touch once we have the token. So this is just like the most basic one that just returns the user info, like the one that has verified. And then moving on, we create a session variable here, and this is where the request OAuth lib comes into play. We're going to use their OAuth to session object. So instead of having to build these requests by hand, and set up all the headers and this and that, we're going to use this library because it does a little bit of lifting for us, keeps things easy, right? We just create this session object and then call a bunch of methods on it, and then passing in the whatever things that we need for those particular methods. So once we have that session variable, we are ready to send our user to the identity server. So this is kind of like a little in-between step here, but we're going to use the session object to create like a clickable link. We print that to the screen. We'll go ahead and click on that. We'll verify, and then, well, I mean, we should probably just give this a run now instead of me going through it. I don't know how many times I've already explained this to you guys here. So let's crack open the terminal. Let's make sure we're in the right place. So let's in there. List simple example indeed. That's what we want to run. So Python 3 simple example. Let's go ahead and run that. Okay, send the user to Indeed by clicking this link. And there we go. So as we already kind of saw, we were given a preview. Hey, blah blah blah. Here's the warning. So we say we know what we're doing here. So we're going to proceed to that unreviewed app. And here they're asking, would you like to let this? So we did the verification process, and here now we're giving the app access to our resources on Indeed. We go ahead and allow, and then I'm sorry that's a little bright there, but this is the static GitHub page. This is the redirect URL if you noticed. TechSparrow-programs blah 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 /website, and here's our authorization code, right? So we're gonna state equals, and then here's the code. Either way, that's how Indeed does it. So we're going to grab that information, go back to our terminal, and here's where we're going to do the pasting. It says paste the full redirect URL here. So I'm going to show you where that is in the code here. Redirect response, so it's asking for our input. So let's go ahead and do that. Boom. Hit enter. And there is the response. Okay, and then what happens in the code, we create a token based on fetching that. So we use our session variable, we fetch the token URL. Hey, this is where we do the exchange. Here are our application credentials, and then this is the redirect response, which contains that authorization code, right? Now we have a token. So we're going to set a response equal to our session variable get user info endpoint. That's the protected endpoint. But our session now has that token in it, right? So we are good to go. Yeah, and this conditional is just to help print everything, right? Import, print, blah, blah, blah. Response from Indeed request. If there was an error, it would have told us, would have printed out error, but here you go. This is the user information from Indeed. We've hit their API. Congratulations. So that pretty much wraps up this simple API example video. I really enjoyed making it. I hope that you have found it interesting and helpful, informative, educational, like some positive word, I hope. If not, sorry about that, but if it was positive, please encourage me to make more of these videos by giving me the like and the subscribes and all that thing. And if there's a particular API that you'd like an example for, or you just can't figure it out, put it down in the comments, and I'll consider taking some time and trying to crack that nut for you. So again, this is TechSparrow with simple API examples. See you, YouTube.